Hello everyone. Hello there. First, let me introduce myself, which I always forget to do. My name is Amelia Borland. I'm an occupational therapist. I have an organization that is built to help caregivers called Higher Standards Caregiver Training. And in lieu of the holidays, it is Thanksgiving Eve, y'all. I thought it would be good to do a little event, especially to support caregivers. It is Family Caregiver Month. November is National Family Caregiver Month. So I wanted to do a little bit of something to support family caregivers. And one of the topics that comes up the most, that people have the most questions about, is caring for folks with Parkinson's disease. So please feel free, if you are joining live today and if you have questions about caring for someone with Parkinson's disease, or frankly, if you have any other burning caregiving questions, then please feel free to put those in the chat and I will do my absolute best to answer. I'm gonna go ahead and give you fair warning though. It is Thanksgiving week and my children are out of school. So I have tried to keep them meaningfully occupied during this time, but there may be, at some point there may be two very wild little boys who run through here. You know, c'est la vie. That's life, and sometimes that's what happens when you go live. That said though, I do have some questions that have come in prior to this event that I thought I would go ahead and get started with and answer. And then, like I said, anyone who is joining live, who's watching live, who wants to participate, who has any questions of their own, please feel free to pop those questions into the chat and I will do my absolute best to answer them. And if I don't have the answer, I'll do my best to direct you to a resource that might actually have that answer for you. Okay, so let's jump right in here. So this is a question for a caregiver of someone who has Parkinson's disease. This is from M from Rhode Island. And what M is asking, she says, my husband has Parkinson's disease and he gets stuck a lot when we are out of the house, like out and about in the community. Why does this happen? That's a really good question. And there can be a couple different reasons for that. Let me first just clarify for anyone who might be watching who might not quite know what that means, that idea of getting stuck or getting frozen. This is something that commonly happens to folks who have Parkinson's disease for a variety of reasons. A lot of time, and we'll talk about what some of those reasons might be. Specifically, when we're thinking about someone with Parkinson's disease who is getting stuck a lot when they're out in the community or out in public, a lot of times, you know, certainly not always, but a lot of times, one of the reasons that people who have Parkinson's disease can get stuck or frozen, or kind of however you want to phrase it, however you think about it, is if they're feeling a lot of pressure to do something quickly. If you've watched any of my other Parkinson's content, you've probably seen me say this before, but if you haven't, I'll kind of review here. So one of the things that happens when people have Parkinson's disease is they often have trouble starting movement and stopping movement. It just takes them a lot more time to get their body to do what they want it to do. One of the things that can happen because of that is that when they're feeling a lot of social pressure to move quickly, those symptoms can actually become worse. So instead of most of us, when we rush to do something, we move faster. The opposite will actually take place, and instead of moving faster to do something, the person with Parkinson's disease will actually kind of get stuck or frozen where they are, trying to move faster. So it's definitely key out in the world, in the community, and just generally at large, it's really helpful to kind of slow things down, take away social pressure as much as possible, and just kind of relax the situation as much as possible. And that can actually help to smooth movement out and kind of speed things along, kind of ironically. Sometimes the less demands, the slower we're asking someone to go, actually the faster they can go when someone has Parkinson's disease. I think that that's an important thing to think about, especially as we are talking about Thanksgiving, as we are coming up into this. I mean, we're in it. We're in it, right? We're in the holidays now. Really thinking about slowing things down, trying to limit the amount of demands that we are placing on folks, not just the people that we're caring for, but also really thinking about how are we managing the demands that we have placed on ourselves in this time, and just trying to reduce that pressure, that social pressure, as much as possible can honestly make the experience so much more enjoyable, more manageable for everyone, and it can literally help folks with Parkinson's disease to be a little bit more independent and move a little bit more successfully. So that could definitely be a reason why M from Rhode Island, why, if you're watching this now, why you might be seeing some kind of getting stuck or freezing in public. Just as a reminder, y'all, obviously this is general education here. This is certainly not a forum where I can hand out actual medical or therapeutic advice. So definitely take that for what it is. And I always encourage anyone that I am providing education to, whether it's through Higher Standards Caregiver Training or in these kind of live formats, definitely, if you are seeing a problem that you think needs to be addressed, be that squeaky wheel, advocate on behalf of yourself, on behalf of the person that you're caring for, to the medical provider that y'all work with, in order to make sure that that problem is being recognized, assessed, and addressed. And I realize as I say that can be a lot easier to say than it is to do. But really and truly, it's the folks who are advocating, who are speaking up for themselves, who are speaking up for their loved ones, who aren't, kind of passively letting things go, who really do benefit from more of the attention that their healthcare providers have to offer. So it's not always easy to do, but it is an important skill to kind of work on in all of ourselves, right? Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question now, and I see we have a couple of viewers here. So if you have any questions, guys, please don't be shy. Feel free to put it in the chat. If I have an answer, I will do my best to give it to you, and if I don't, I will do my best to direct you to the resource that does, I promise. Okay, so we have another question from Jay in California, and Jay is asking, he says, my mother-in-law has Parkinson's disease and lives with us. One of the things that my wife is struggling with is the fact that her mom doesn't seem to respond emotionally anymore. Oh, this is such an interesting question. He says, I think it's Parkinson's. He thinks it's the Parkinson's, but my wife is taking it personally. What's going on? Okay, Ron and Kelly. Oh, awesome. Thank you so much, Kelly. I'm glad that you like that. Ron, I'm gonna answer your question as best as I can in just a second. I'm gonna go ahead and deal with the question that I just got here first. So I want to preface my answer here by saying that Parkinson's is an extremely complex disease, and there can be so many different reasons why someone might have different or changed emotional responses in a situation. So absolutely, if this is something to be concerned about, I'm going to kind of reiterate my prior advice, which is to, if you're seeing something that you're concerned with, it's honestly best not to guess. Definitely bring that up with with your mother-in-law's physician, with her medical team, and make sure that they are not ignoring that and getting it assessed and addressed for you. That said, there are so many reasons why someone with Parkinson's disease might have a more limited emotional response. Definitely keep in mind that things like depression, anxiety, and other mental health issues are actually very common in folks who are living with Parkinson's disease. So absolutely, those things are a concern. One of the other common sort of symptoms of Parkinson's disease, though, is something that we in the healthcare community call a flat affect. And that's just, we like to make things fancy sounding in the medical community, I think just because it makes us feel smart. But all that means is that someone's facial expression doesn't change very much. They kind of stay like almost poker face all the time. It's like having a poker face all the time. One of the reasons that can happen in Parkinson's disease is because at the heart of Parkinson's disease, it is a motor sensory disconnection. So people often are not getting good input. People with Parkinson's disease aren't, yes, exactly, that's right, Kelly, the Parkinson's mask. A very, very common symptom. So what happens is folks with Parkinson's disease are not able to really get good sensory information. They're not feeling what their body is doing when they're trying to move. And of course, we see this a lot in people taking very small steps, in people speaking very softly, in handwriting getting really, really small. Those are all common things that we see in folks with Parkinson's disease. And those are a symptom of that sensory motor disconnection. But another part of that can be the muscles in our faces are obviously also controlled by our brain. Our facial expressions are controlled by muscles that are controlled by our brain. So sometimes when folks with Parkinson's disease have that mask-like face, they may not realize that they maybe don't have a big smile on their face, that they don't have a frown on their face, that they may be feeling like they are making those expressions, when in fact the expressions are so small that it's much, much harder for us to read socially. So that's always an important thing to keep in mind. Definitely, this is something, a lot of the things that we see with Parkinson's disease can be improved with good therapeutic intervention, including we do see results. If you look at research, we do see good results in helping with that flat affect or that Parkinson's mask with things like therapy to help teach people with Parkinson's different coping mechanisms, different skills that they can use in order to help make that a little bit better. So again, I can't advocate enough for just saying, if you're seeing the problem, make sure that you are talking with your loved ones or the person you're caring for. Make sure you're talking with their medical provider about what possible options are. Advocate for them to see a therapist, whether that's an occupational therapist, a physical therapist, a speech therapist. All of these professionals can be extraordinarily helpful in when they're working with someone with Parkinson's disease. So, this is kind of like a never give up, never surrender scenario where we just have to be really, really great about advocating all the time. Okay, so I'm going to get raw and I'm going to address your question now. Does anyone believe Parkinson's is a metabolical or chronic disease that can be prevented and or reversed? That's a really big question, and I'm going to go ahead and say that I probably don't know 100% of the answer to that. In general, in the medical community, so far as I am aware of, and certainly I'm not like the world's foremost authority on everything going on in the medical communities around Parkinson's, but in general, I think we don't know if it's something that can be prevented. If it is, we don't know how to prevent it at this point. So I know that's probably kind of an unsatisfying answer, but if it is something that we can prevent, then it's not something that we understand how we can prevent it at this point. Can it be, and is it something that can be reversed? Again, if it's something that can be reversed, obviously at this point in the general medical establishment, we don't know that that is possible. I have not heard of any anecdotal evidence, just word of mouth or stories about anything like that. So the answer is, does anyone believe Parkinson's is a metabolic or chronic disease that can be prevented or reversed? I think it's certainly something that we hope. We hope that that is true, and we hope that it can, and we hope that we can find a way to do that. But I think probably the answer, the best answer that I can give is most likely that we don't know. That's a really interesting question, though. I'm gonna look into some research and kind of maybe dig through that a little bit, just if only for my own knowledge, to kind of get a better understanding about kind of what's going on in cutting edge research as far as Parkinson's goes. This is sort of an interesting aside. It has nothing to do with anyone's questions, so bear with me. But this is actually something that I learned way before I ever became a therapist. I learned it like when I was in college taking a psychopharmacology course, which I took 1 million years ago, so forgive me if I get some details wrong here. But actually, the way that they figured out what some of the underlying causes of Parkinson's disease are, which one of those underlying causes is a lack of dopamine in specific areas of the brain that work in many complicated ways. So we know that folks with Parkinson's disease have less dopamine in their brains, in certain areas of their brains. And that causes issues with movement and other issues. The way they actually figured that out was through some accidental, I want to say it was in like the 60s or 70s, but again, forgive me, I'm probably going to get some details here wrong because I took this class 1 million years ago. But it was so interesting to me. They found out that it had to do with dopamine by some accidental drug interactions from a totally different, from a drug that has nothing to do with Parkinson's disease, that caused people to have a sudden drop in the amount of dopamine in their brains, and that led to those people having Parkinsonian type symptoms. So that's kind of how they first kind of figured out that it had anything to do with dopamine to begin with. Anyway, that's probably not the best story, but I think that's interesting. Okay, I'm going to move on to another question here. Please, again, feel free, if anyone who's watching live has a question, please feel free to drop it into the chat there. Okay, so let's see. We've got, I think, time. We'll do one more question here. Okay, let's see. So P from Texas says, in your training, you talk about medication timing. Why is timing so important? Oh, Ron, okay, let me respond to you. There's very convincing recent research in New Zealand, I think that's what that NZ is, that confirms my personal experience. I eliminated all my Parkinson's symptoms and the associated drugs and therapies. That's really interesting, Ron. I would be so interested to hear more of your story. Oh my gosh, and Kelly, you couldn't be more right. There is so much more that we don't know about how our brains and our bodies work than we do know about it. I mean, our brains and our bodies are infinitely complex. It's really, truly miraculous that we get up and function the way we do every day. It's so complicated. So it's always important to remember that we don't know a lot more than we do know. That's part of why yeah, exactly. Until they find a cause, they can't exactly find the cure. And sometimes causes, it's very rare that something is caused by a single factor. That's sort of that's how we want it to be, right? Because it would make it more simple for anything. It's always easier when we can identify a single cause for something. Like we know that the common cold is caused by a virus, right? So that's a single cause. So many of the things that are complicated that folks struggle with are likely caused by many, many, many different factors. And that makes it so much more complicated to figure out, unfortunately, in the long term, how to have a really effective treatment for them. It is an ongoing struggle that we have, and that's why there's so much research being done into all these things. I just love these comments, guys. Thank you so much for your participation here. This is awesome, totally awesome. Okay, so back to that question about medication timing and why it's so important. Now, and I'll say, like, as a therapist, I don't prescribe medications. I don't, deal with medications or anything like that. But medication timing and understanding how timing medication is important with Parkinson's disease is super, super, super important for caregivers to know. And the reason is that because a lot of the medications that we use to help manage the symptoms of Parkinson's disease are all about changing the chemistry of the brain to increase that amount of dopamine that is available in those specific areas of the brain that we see causing the symptoms of Parkinson's disease. And those chemicals can change really, really quickly. So, and if you have cared for anyone with Parkinson's disease, you have probably seen this happen before, where someone can be very rigid, almost immovable, having an extremely difficult time doing anything, and then their medication kicks in, and it's like magic, like a totally different person. Because of how quickly some of those reactions happen, it can be really, really important to keep the timing of medication just as it has been prescribed by the doctor, so that there's always, so that those medications are not kind of like running out in that person's system. It can also be really, really tricky to get that timing right, to get dosages right, to get all those things right. So absolutely, medication timing, all of that stuff, that needs to be an ongoing conversation with the physician caring for the person with Parkinson's disease, to make sure that all of those things are as ideal as possible, in order to make sure that that person is getting the best possible effects. So timing is really, really important. And again, I can't stress more, having ongoing communication with the physician, with the medical team, to let them know what's working, what's not working, so they can make things adjust as needed. Sometimes it can feel like trying to get all of the stars to align to get it set right, and it can take time. But the only way that we can get those stars to align is through that kind of constant communication, letting people know what works, what doesn't, and having a team that is responsive to you to kind of work with you and make it all happen. Kelly asks, is this not part of the half-life of medications? Yeah, that's a great insight. So when we're talking about medications, and again, as a therapist, medications are not generally something that I can speak on as an expert. It's not something that I can prescribe or anything. But medications have a half-life, right, where they can only become so effective. There's only so much of it in the body, basically. And different medications have different half-lives. So basically what that means is some medications hang around in your body for a lot longer than others. And so that can be one of the reasons why timing and following, really truly with all medications, making sure that we're following the prescription, the doctor's orders, can be super, super important. because we don't want too much of a medication in our system, and we don't want too little of a medication in our system if it's actually going to be able to do its job in a way that will help us and not hurt us. Let's see. Okay, so question, and we'll wrap up here soon, if only because my children are probably going to escape here soon and wreak havoc. Okay, so Jay from California says, I'm interested in taking some courses after watching your content on YouTube and Facebook. How can I do that? Well, I am super happy to tell you about that, Jay from California. So, what you can do, so first of all, the place that you should go to is my website at www.higherstandardscaregivertraining.com. And there are a few different ways that you can get information there, depending really truly on what you need. The first way is you can, anytime you want, 24 hours a day, you can find a course that meets the needs that you have. So for example, I have a full-length, like no holds barred Parkinson's, caring for someone with Parkinson's disease course, which I really, really, truly do recommend to any caregivers of someone with Parkinson's who might be watching this right now. I am really proud of this course that I put together, y'all. It has some of the most powerful information. I don't hold back at all in terms of like just delivering to you every bit of knowledge that I can through my experience as a therapist that can really truly help dramatically make things easier and as a caregiver of someone with Parkinson's disease. So definitely, if you are caring for someone with Parkinson's disease, go check that course out. After this, I will post something with a link directly to that if you want me to, but you can also go directly to www.higherstandardscaregivertraining.com, and you can take that course anytime. 24 hours a day, it is available to you. There are also a ton of other courses for caregivers, and these are practical, skills-based courses, y'all. Everything from, very basic, how should you move to protect your back? How do you manage common types of equipment? How do you get someone up from bed? How do you manage something like bed level care if that's what someone needs? All the way up to very complex issues like how do you use a Hoyer? How do you care for someone with Parkinson's disease, dementia, various topics. So all of that is available to you anytime, 24 hours a day, on demand. I try to make these courses incredibly affordable so that everyone can have access to them. The other, are you speaking as caregivers on professional level or as family spouse? Honestly, so there are actually courses available to both groups of people through Higher Standards Caregiver Training. So if you visit the site, there are places there you can be directed towards either trainings for individuals or family members, or trainings available to professional caregivers or caregiving organizations. So it's definitely there for either group of people. For individual caregivers, for family caregivers, you can take a single course at a time, or if you need a little bit more support, you kind of want more information, you can take a bundle of courses. You can select a bundle of courses, and there is actually a Parkinson's bundle, which really gives a lot of the information that I recommend folks caring for someone with Parkinson's to have. And that includes the Parkinson's course as well as many of the other basic skills courses for caregivers. And then if you really need a lot of support, or if you want ongoing support, if you want to be able to have, regular, multiple time a month, face-to-face interaction with me, to actually ask specific questions, get those questions answered, then I also have a subscription level membership that's available for both family and individual caregivers, and then I work with organizations as well to kind of answer that question for you, Kelly. So there are lots of ways to take courses, kind of depending on what your needs are and ultimately what you want to achieve. Again, you can just take a single course if you just need a little bit of help, a little bit of knowledge, or you just kind of want to dip your toe in. You can get a course bundle if you want more information, if you kind of want a more kind of complete picture. And then if you really want a lot of support, if you want to access 100% of all the courses all the time, as often as you want, and you want access to, consistent live training groups with myself and with other caregivers, then there is the subscription option available to you as well. So definitely take advantage of that if you feel like it's something that you need. And if you have questions, yeah, Kelly, absolutely. Reach out to me. If you have other questions, I'd be happy to answer them and kind of direct you to whatever is appropriate for you, of course. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up here. But I do want to say, for Thanksgiving, let's just acknowledge the fact that the holidays can be a really challenging time for everyone. But especially if you are a family caregiver, these times can be even more challenging. So I kind of just want to leave you with this thought of, keep in mind that tomorrow is not about perfection. It's not about having every recipe exactly the way, your great grandma had it. It's not about having the perfect centerpiece. It's not about those things. Thanksgiving, if we can kind of bring it back to what it's really about, is about trying to have gratitude, and about being together with whomever we are there with, and having gratitude for that. So give yourself a break, cut yourself some slack, find something to have gratitude for, to be thankful for. I'll tell you right now, I am so grateful. I'm so thankful that I am able to, through my experience, through my knowledge, I'm so thankful that I have this great opportunity and this privilege to serve caregivers, like the ones who participated today, like anyone else who might be watching this in the future. I am deeply, deeply grateful to do the job that I do for y'all and to provide any support and resources that I can. So make sure you're being kind to yourself tomorrow and throughout the rest of the season. Make sure that you're focusing on the things that really, really matter to you. And if there's anything that I can do for you, please make sure that you are reaching out. I'd be happy to help in any way that I can. All right, y'all, I'm going to go ahead and sign off now before wild children start running through here. And, oh, Kelly, you made my day. You really did. I'm going to log off before I start to cry. Thank you so much, Kelly. That means the world to me. It really does. Have a wonderful holiday, okay? Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Bye, guys.